Sunday school class. Appreciate y'all being here this morning. And we're, there she is. Thank you. Jamie's got, no, keep them, Jamie. Jamie's got, I think this week we're about halfway through Genesis chapter 8. And thanks very much to Mark, who taught for me the last couple of weeks while we were out on vacation, basically being lazy, as I've told y'all. So didn't really, not very productive, but we had a good time and enjoyed ourselves, and missed y'all, missed being here. But again, thanks to Mark, we're really blessed to have at least three substitute teachers in here. So I've got a lot of opportunity now to turn to others, and we may just take off more now that we got such good substitutes, and be gone. So, but hopefully y'all have had a good couple of weeks, and again, we're glad to be back. So Jamie is checking to see if anybody needs the handout from last week. Mark started that lesson about halfway through, and so the goal is today to try to finish Genesis chapter 8, get into Genesis chapter 9. Supposedly, we're supposed to go through Genesis chapter 11 by the end of this month. Well, good luck with that. So I don't know that that's really going to happen, but that's the goal. And the goal is, assuming that we possibly did that, and we may do this anyway, in December, the first 3 Sundays of December, we're going to study a book by Robert Morgan called The Red Sea Rules. And we did this years ago, and I'm trying to think who was, if you remember. Jill was there. Anybody else in class? Oh, we've got three folks there.
The red what?
Red Sea Rules. Yeah. You were there, Kim? Kind of, sort of. Okay. Well, we're going to do it again because, again, if only 3 or 4 of were here when we did it. I think it's a great book, and it's at least 3 weeks of lessons there. And then on Christmas Day, we'll have services only. On New Year's Day, we'll have services only. At 10 o'clock. Stan says 10 o'clock on both of those days. So we'll just see kind of how it goes between now and then, and we may adjust what we're studying a little bit. And then after we get through all of that, we'll come back to Mark. So begin Mark chapter 4. It's where we left off last time. So that's kind of what's ahead for us. All right. With that, other announcements this morning? Anything else we need to mention? Oh, yeah, Jill says we need to think about a Christmas party. That's good. Jill, I think, did I hear you say you volunteered to organize that? That's what I thought I heard. So Jill, the ball's in your court. So.
Well, we did Shoney's last year. That was a fun place because we had a big room. We'll do something similar to that if that's okay.
Okay. You let us know. So, good. All right. Thank you, Jill. Backpacks all turned in and gone, I guess, Jill. How many did we have, by the way?
Next year. We ended up with 78.
78. That's pretty good.
Even though we took up more, and I think we had some that took them and forgot to bring them back.
Well, if we see them walking around with them on their backs, Jill, you'll have to get on them. So, all right, good. Okay, before we start then this morning, Jill, I'm going to pick on you again. Would you open us in prayer this morning?
Lord, I just pray that you would just reveal yourself.
All right, thank you, Jill. Appreciate you leading prayer. So, Martha, would you read for us Genesis chapter 8, verses 15 through 22? Genesis chapter 8, verses 15 through 22.
Then God spoke to Noah, saying, Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and animals and everything that crawls on the earth, that they may breed abundantly on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every animal, every crawling thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by their families from the ark. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every kind of clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. The Lord smelled the soothing aroma, and the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. And I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease.
All right, thank you, Mark. So, looking at just verse 15 there on your handout, what happened in Genesis chapter 8, verse 15? God spoke to Noah. So, before the flood, God had said to Noah, come into the ark. That was Genesis chapter 7, verse 1. So, the clear implication of God saying that was that God was already inside the ark, and he was inviting Noah to join him in there. Now, in verse 16 of chapter 8, what did God say to Noah? Go out of the ark. The flood's over. God said to Noah, come out of the ark. And with that, it's recorded that God again spoke to Noah. So this is the first time that's recorded that God spoke to Noah since God invited Noah into the ark. So about a year has passed. To our knowledge, God had not spoken to Noah during that period of time. So God now tells Noah to exit the ark. So what's the implication of what God said in Genesis 8:16? All right, thank you, Jill. Good.
Well, I mean, we get the idea that
They stayed together as a family. They entered the ark together as a family, and they exited the ark together as a family. So they stayed together as the family unit. Very good. What else? What was God asking Noah and his family to do? Go out into the world. Be obedient and trust him. Follow me. Follow my direction. Follow my instructions. So Noah was being asked by God here to follow him. So Noah, some 56 days before this, had seen that the surface of the land was dry, but he remained in the ark until God told him to exit the ark. So don't you imagine that Noah and his family was ready to get out of a stinky, cramped, smelly ark. But what did they do? They wait on the Lord's direction and his timing before they left the ark. So this is such, I think, an example for us to wait on the Lord. We are commanded to wait on the Lord's calling in our lives and to follow him and not our own direction or not our own desires. So Noah shows us this example here. 56 days later, after the surface was dry, he and his family then exits the ark. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 say, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. So just as Mark said, Noah here was expressing faith and obedience in God. He was not trusting in his own ways. He was waiting for God and trusting in God's ways. So does God tell us the same thing that he told Noah in Genesis 8:16? Jill saying yes, yes. So certainly God does. So this is Jesus' basic message to us throughout the New Testament. Follow me. Matthew chapter 16 verse 24 says, "Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." That is the basic message of the whole New Testament. Follow Jesus. And here we see Noah setting this example in the Old Testament that he follows God's direction in his life. So in verse 17, what is Noah commanded to do? Bring all the animals out and... I'm sorry, Dorothy. And it goes on to say that. Bring out all the animals and who else? Every living creature, including meaning his family. So he is commanded to bring out all the animals and his family. Again, to Mark's and Jill's point, this family unit is staying together, and not only are the animals are coming out at the same time as Noah did. So why is Noah given this commandment in Genesis chapter 8, verse 17? I think Jeanette just said it. What were they supposed to do? Or somebody said that. Maybe that was Dorothy. I'm sorry. Yeah, be fruitful and multiply. So God remembers here and is reinstituting his commandment of Genesis 1:22. When in that verse he says, God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas and let the birds multiply on the earth. So here we're seeing a new beginning, a fresh start as such for humanity, for the animals, through Noah and his family. So what does Genesis 8:18 tell us? That what? He obeyed, exactly. Tells us that Noah was obedient. Jill says he obeyed, exactly. So Noah did not disembark from the ark until God instructed him to do so. So are you and I seeking God's will in all that we do? We should be. Is we should be the same as we are? Kim saying no, I think. No. Both saying no. Again, a few of you said no. The rest of you didn't answer. But I know I fail too often to do my own thing before seeking God's will. Too often I think I examine situations, reach my own conclusions, and then pray. And then when I pray, ask God to bless my choices rather than what I should have prayed first and ask him what I should do or what I needed to do before I did it, and then ask for his blessing afterwards. So Noah waited on the Lord. He listened to God and then acted. And Johnny, would you put up the picture, please, that first picture? In Genesis 8:19, we see that the animals also exited the ark. And there's a picture of the animals exiting the ark. Now, there's at least one thing wrong with this picture.
You don't have the stench coming up.
Yeah, it doesn't have the smell, all right, coming from the ark, right?
They're adult animals.
They're adult animals. That's something they're adult animals. I didn't think about that. Yeah, they're all grown up. What else?
Ain't no fighting.
What's that? There's no fighting. Animals are still getting along with each other. What's that, Debbie? There's a path. Looks like there's a path or a road. That's kind of interesting.
How many windows are in that ark?
Yeah, there's a bunch of windows in that ark, isn't it? That's wrong with that picture. I didn't notice that before. Thank you, Y'all are noticing all kinds of stuff wrong with this that I hadn't noticed. How many animals, how many pairs are there coming out in this picture? One pair. How many pairs should there be? Clean animals, there should be 7, right? 7 pairs. A lot of these are clean animals that we're seeing there. So it's interesting. I just, again, this is just an illustration, but I just thought that was kind of funny when I started looking at that. There's only 1 pair, but really there were 7 pairs of clean animals. So they're exiting the ark here. It says they went out by their families from the ark. Again, just as the parade went by Adam when he named all the animals, he had this parade of animals going by. I think this would have been another neat thing to see, this parade of animals exiting the ark.
There was one thing that kind of impressed me when we went to the ark. They had a showing of books that you would think would be good for little children to see, but they had so many ill-conceived ideas, about it, that they were pointing out books that would have pictures like of grown animals or just things that were wrong.
Animals, they're sticking outside the ark and so all that kind of thing. So
that they were kind of warning you to, that maybe they were not the best to give to your children.
Be careful of, how. Again, it's what's the right word? It's children's level, but you got to be careful that it's also biblical too. So when you give your children, grandchildren stuff to read. So it says that even the animals left according to their families. So we see that God is a God of order, even in regard to animals. So here they're leaving, and the picture did show the lions together and the tigers together and the giraffes together. That's how the Bible says they left. So they're leaving in order. So I just think we need to remind ourselves that God is always a God of order. God is not a God of chaos. So lack of competition when the animals left the ark allows them to multiply rapidly. Animals would press forward from this point forward until they found their geographical niche in the world where they were supposed to live. And it's believed that animals that were highly specialized or had lived in the environment before the flood could not live in the environment after the flood. The environment changed dramatically before the flood, it's believed, until after the flood. And because of that, it is thought that a number of these specialized animals, dinosaurs as such, became extinct. So the Ice Age, creationists believe, did follow the flood, and that made it also difficult for some of these animals to survive when the Ice Age occurred. Now, we could spend at least one lesson on the Ice Age, but we're not going to do that. But if you want to know more about it, it's very interesting about the Ice Age and what could have occurred, how creationists view the Ice Age versus how secularists view the Ice Age. But we don't have time to do that. I've already said we're going to be way behind as is. So what's the first thing Noah did upon leaving the ark? He built an altar. And what does building an altar imply as such? Sacrifice. What's that? Worship, sacrifice, worship. Thanksgiving, praise. This concept, where would Noah have gotten this concept of building an altar to begin with? By the way, there's a first here in this verse, Genesis 8:20. What's the first in there? First time we see a word in the Bible. What is it? first mention of an altar in the Bible. So this is the first time altar is used in the Bible. So where would, again, Noah have gotten this concept of building an altar, and we'll see later he's going to sacrifice animals on the altar. Where would that have come from?
Was that something that God had revealed to Adam before?
Jeff is saying that's something that God had revealed to Adam before. Did I understand? Is that what you said, Jeff? Before, yeah. So how did God reveal that to Adam? What had God done?
Back in Genesis 6:18, it was talking about covenant, because that was the first time the word covenant was used in the Bible. Is that related or not to this?
We're going to get to that, yeah, but
He made the clothes.
yeah, Alice says that God killed animals, sacrificed animals to make clothes for Adam and Eve. So we see this concept of sacrifice come into being at the time that God killed animals to clothe Adam and Eve. So Noah did not build a house first when he got off of the boat, off the ark. He built an altar first. First thing he did when he got off the stinky, cramped boat, instead of going out, we better build a house. There's Mrs. Noah's probably saying, we got to have a place to live in. Get out there and build us a house, Noah. But, no, I'm just teasing. But here, instead of him being concerned about himself, his family first, he's concerned, as we said, about sacrifice, about praise, about worship. So the first thing on his mind when he gets out is build an altar and worship God. So we've used this acrostic before. It's joy. This is how Adam on the brain now, how Noah lived. It was according to joy. Jesus, others, yourself. Jesus, others, yourself. That's how we see the example of Noah here. That's how we should live too, according to that acrostic, joy. All right, so what amount did Noah sacrifice? Yeah, so he took some of every kind of clean animal and some of every clean bird. So, but we don't really know what some means. So, but let's just say, for sake of having a number as such, Noah sacrificed 1/7 of his flocks. There were 7 pairs of clean animals. So if he just sacrificed 1/7 of those pairs, this required no little faith. Think about that. When Noah and them got off the boat, they were dependent upon these animals for food and clothing. And here, though, instead of being all that concerned about me, he sacrificed at least 2, we're going to say, of those 14 animals, 1 pair of those 7 pairs, and gave that as a sacrifice to God. So, again, we don't know how long this took, but again, we know that this was a, let's say, tremendous sacrifice on Noah's part. So how much of when Noah made this sacrifice, how much of the animal was consumed by fire on the altar? All of it. Kim says all of it. And why was it all of it? All of it. All of the animal. It burned up, but he could have roasted them a while and taken them out and had it for dinner, but they did all burn up totally. Why was that?
Because the other 6 pairs would turn around and run, and they were
The other 6 pair would turn around and run. So, yeah. I figured it out. Maybe, but I don't think so, Jill. What's that, Alice? I'm sorry, Alice, couldn't hear you.
It was an offering.
It was an offering. certainly an offering. But why? You know, the priests later on, we see they got to eat some of it, some of the sacrificed animals.
Because Noah sacrificed it, therefore he didn't take it back.
Kim says because Noah sacrificed it, he couldn't take it back. Right? Is that what you said, Kim?
No, he couldn't take it back. He didn't take it back.
He didn't take it back. So I think here, Kim's on the right track here, that the whole animal is consumed by the fire because it symbolized, this sacrifice symbolized that Noah was giving everything to God. He was not holding anything back of his praise, his worship, his thanksgiving. He gave it all here. Again, this is a pretty big sacrifice. So how would you characterize Noah's response here? What's that? Godly. Kim says godly. Certainly.
He was very submissive and humble, I think.
Jill says he was very submissive and humble. Why do you say that, Jill?
Because, that's a big deal. He'd been with these animals and probably got used to them,
Yeah.
Not paying animals.
Yeah. You know, that's, I think Jill makes a very good point there that they're on this boat, this ark, for a year with these animals. So you just, probably human nature that Noah and his family named these animals. You know, that's old Shep and that's, Baba and whatever the names were. But he could have had a, quote, personal relationship with these animals. So that it does symbolize, I think, in a degree, the extent of the sacrifice, how personal it was for him, how big a sacrifice it was for him. What else? He was chosen. Nona says that Noah walked with God, so he was chosen to, say the rest of that again. No, I forgot already. Oh, he's chosen to build the ark, and then, so he was chosen to build the ark. He walked with God, so it led to Noah, when he gets off the ark, of what? Continue to do what God directed him. Did God direct him to build this altar and sacrifice? No, God didn't direct him. Noah did this on his own. So why did he do this on his own? He was grateful. He was thankful. Here, God, you've taken me through this year of floating in this boat with all this animals, through this huge storm that, just shook the world, ended the world as we knew it as such, but you took us through it. So it was, I started saying extreme, I guess it was an extreme demonstration of gratitude for praise for Noah's salvation through the flood as such. So this should be the same response that we have to our salvation, right? God has saved, if we're a believer, God has saved us, so we should also have an attitude of gratitude. An attitude of gratitude that God has spared us because of his Son Jesus and the blood that he shed for us. So also, wouldn't you have been happy here now that you've gotten off this boat with all these stinky animals and been in this dark, damp place for a year, and now you get to get off and nothing else? I'd be grateful just for that, right? Thankful for just that. So because of, again, we've talked about how many kinds of animals, there are different, estimations from 1,000 to 3,000 different kinds that were on the ark with him. Well, if he just sacrificed 1/7 of those, think how long that could have taken for just this sacrifice, this time of gratitude and praise to God. It could have been days, weeks, months to sacrifice all these different animals that he sacrificed when he got off the boat. So it was an extensive expression and time period of thanksgiving that Noah had. It was an example of extravagant sacrifice that Noah did. Warren Wiersbe, in his book Big Basic, says Noah was a balanced believer. Wiersbe says Noah walked with God, Noah worked for God, Noah witnessed for God, Noah waited on God, and now Noah worshiped God. So we are also to be balanced believers, just as Noah was. We're to walk with God, we're to work for God, we're to witness for God, we're to wait on God, and we're to worship God. So this is a rhetorical question, but can you recall an altar building experience in your life? And secondly, can you recall a time of extravagant sacrifice in your life? Think about that. I'm not asking for a verbal response, but think about that. Hopefully, you can recall a number of altar building experiences. I'm saying that symbolically, not that you went out and built an altar out of rocks or whatever, but a time of experience in your life when you built an altar to worship God, to show sacrifice to God, to praise God. So hopefully, even if it's a symbolic time, you have those times in your life. If not, hopefully, going forward, you'll recognize times in your life to do that. All right, so again, we see Noah's action here, his sacrifice, as a type or foreshadowing of Jesus. How so? How do we see this as a type or foreshadowing of Jesus? Yeah, Jill says God gave his son Jesus a sacrifice for us. Ephesians 5, chapter 5, verse 2 says, and walk in love just as Christ also loved you and gave himself up for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God as a fragrant aroma. So Jesus offered himself fully, totally for us. And in the Old Testament, an offering of an animal was totally burned, as we talked about, to represent total sacrifice, all in kind of thing. Nothing was held back. Jesus did not hold back anything when he sacrificed for us. So Wiersbe again says, like the ark that saved Noah and his family, Jesus Christ went through the storm of God's judgment for us. Okay? All right, so what was God's response to Noah's sacrifice? It was pleasing. It specifically says what? In verse 21 of chapter 8. That was the promise. You're jumping ahead, Jill. Well, that is part of the response, part of the promise there. But what was his, in Genesis 8:21, what's he say? He smelled the soothing aroma of the sacrifice. Smelled bacon, yeah.
No, that's unclean.
It's unclean.
It was brisket.
Yeah, brisket. So yeah, it was So when it says that when God smelled the soothing aroma, somebody said it. I think Martha said it was pleasing to God. The writer of Genesis here is putting God's feelings as such into human terms so we can understand it. It was a soothing aroma. It was like smelling bacon. Bacon hadn't become unclean yet until that doesn't happen till later. So whatever. So, but God, the bottom line, God was pleased with Noah's sacrifice and his worship. Genesis 8:21-22 states, then here the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. I think that's kind of strange that phrase is stuck into Genesis there. What's that telling us? In Genesis 8, chapter 8, verses 21-22, it states, the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. I just think here's Noah's getting off the boat, off the ark, and he's had this great sacrifice and praise time of worship. And here, God, through the writer of Genesis, tells us still the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. What's it telling us? Man hasn't changed. Even though God is starting over, there's a new beginning. As such, man's character is the same. It's evil from our youth. How sad, right? Think about that. How sad that is. So the only thing we know that can change that or will change that in man is who? Jesus. Somebody said it. Jesus. So the only thing that can change that is Jesus. John 14:6 says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Only Jesus can change man's character. Okay, so even though man's heart had not changed, what did God promise? Jill started on this a minute ago. What did you say, Jill, a minute ago? He's not going to curse the ground again. So God would not make farming any more difficult than he'd already made it after Adam's fall as such. So that's the first thing. What's the second part of that promise? What's that? Not smite anything?
That's what it said in mine,
Not
not kill.
kill anything?
Mine says, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done.
Oh, okay. So God promised that there would not be another worldwide flood. All right? So that's the second part of this promise. And then there's a third part of this promise, and what is it? Yeah. Jill says, day and night will not cease. And what that's saying to us in more modern translations is this flood, this worldwide flood that had occurred had disrupted the seasons of the year as such. And God promised here that the world would return to its normal patterns. So after this terrifying chaos of the flood, the comforting, predictable rhythms of life would return. We would have spring, summer, fall, winter. Okay, so that returns. So three parts to God's promise there that he tells us. So in Genesis 8:22, the hint of prophecy is given. What's the prophecy in Genesis 8:22? Got to read between the lines. What's the prophecy in Genesis 8:22?
Someday the earth's not going to be here.
Someday the earth is not going to be here. It says, as long as the earth endures. So this verse points toward the end of the present world order and anticipates a new heaven and a new earth, which we're told about in the book of Revelation.
Global change, climate change needs to occur.
Global change and climate change needs to occur.
Stop it, it ceases.
Yeah, you stop it, it ceases, Jeff says. So again, we're told here that people are going to exist for some period of time, but Christ is going to come again, and at that time, first there'll be a rapture, and then when he comes again for good, there will be a new heavens and a new earth. Okay? All right, so with all this, what do you take away from as application from Genesis chapter 8? We spent all this time on it, so what do you take away?
God keeps his promises.
God keeps his promises. Yes, definitely. That's definitely one of the things that we learn in here, that God promises that he will never end the earth again by a flood, and he conveys that promise through the symbol of the rainbow. What else?
Do what God tells you even though you may not understand why.
Kim says, do what God tells you even though you don't understand why. So, yeah, Noah built this ark. As we said earlier, he may not even have ever seen rain before. And so if that was the case, he still built this ark out in the middle of this, area, this dry land as such, because God told him. He was obedient. So we are to do what God tells us to do, be obedient, even though, as Kim says, we may not understand the reason. What else? It's a lot of things. Trust and obey. That's a song, isn't it, Jeanette? So, trust and obey, exactly. So we are to trust and be obedient to God's direction in our lives, right? Yep, good.
I think when we worship Him like Noah did at the altar, it makes me think that God was smiling when He says He smells sweet, sweet savor. It makes me feel like when we're obedient and do what He says, He is very, very pleased and He blesses us.
Yeah, Jill says when we, what Noah did, he built the altar. God's response was it was a soothing aroma to him. God, in other words, was pleased. And Jill's saying that's an analogy. When we're obedient to God, God is pleased with us, and she visualizes God smiling because we're obedient. What else?
We should always have an attitude of gratitude because regardless of our situation.
Jeff says we should always have an attitude of gratitude regardless of the situation. Don't let circumstances dictate our attitudes. How often, though, do we fail in that and let our circumstances dictate what our attitude is? Because if we're a believer, we can live with joy. We can live with an attitude of gratitude regardless of the circumstances. Regardless if we're in a stinky, smelly boat, we can still live with an attitude of gratitude. Thank you. What else? Well, let me give you a few others that I've got while you think about it. God is the God of the storm, but He's also the God of all comfort. God is the God of the storm, but He's also the God of all comfort. Noah was helpless to change the situation, so don't worry about what you can't change, right? Noah, in the meantime, when we're in one of these situations that we can't change, in the meantime, rest in God's Word. Noah had to keep his faith in God while waiting for God to silence the storm. Okay? Ruach Elohim, or Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit, also comes and brings comfort in believers' lives. The Spirit came over the waters of the flood and dried the waters of the flood, this worldwide flood during Noah's day. The Holy Spirit will still the waters that we're floating in, that we're in as well. Walking with God does not mean we always know exactly what to do. God expects us to do what we can do. We do what's humanly possible and trust God to guide and direct us and do what is humanly impossible. Okay? God sends doves into our lives to provide comfort and encouragement. Remember, Noah sent out the dove. The dove ultimately came back with a twig from a tree, which would provide Noah comfort that the flood was ending. The waters were going down. So, get that. So even though it looks enticing, Noah saw that the land was dry, the surface was dry 56 days before he got off the boat. We're commanded to wait on the Lord's calling in our lives to follow Him and not follow our own direction or our own desires. Wait on the Lord, listen to God, and then act. Noah put God first. And as we said, the acrostic as an example of that is Jesus, others, yourself. So that's how we should live, how Noah lived. So our response to God, Jeff said this one, our response should be an attitude of gratitude. And then finally, we are to be balanced believers as Noah was. We're to walk with God. We're to work for God. We're to witness for God. We're to wait on God. we're to worship God. Be a balanced believer. Okay, anything else? Chapter 8 is going.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, Mark.
You was talking about the burnt offerings. We live on a rock quarry here in Wilson County. So, as we were raising the goats, when one passed on us, you can't dig a hole on a rock quarry unless you have a lot of dynamite. So we would always burn the dead animal. It would take 4 to 5 hours to burn a goat where you could not see it again. One goat, 4 to 5 hours, a very large pile of wood.
Wow.
So if you can imagine, like you said, all those animals in the ark, that burnt offering, without the Lord's help, he was there a long time.
If you didn't hear it, Mark said takes 4 or 5 hours. He had raised goats for a long time, and when the one goat died, they couldn't bury it because it was hard to do living on rock. That he would burn the goat, and it would take 4 to 5 hours to burn one goat. And his point was, think about if it takes 4 or 5 hours to burn one goat, how long it took for Noah's sacrifice, how long it lasted. Again, if not days, probably weeks, if not weeks, probably months that this sacrifice went on. So
It's hard to find seasoned dry wood, too.
hard to find seasoned dry wood. He burned up a lot, particularly after a flood. He had to find a lot of dry wood somewhere. That's a good point. Maybe he chopped up the ark. Maybe it doesn't exist. All these people looking for the ark, he chopped it up. Yeah, he chopped it up for the altar. I never thought about that, but it could be. All right, Johnny, would you put up our next visual here, please? We're going to talk about, there's a little bit of the symbol. If you would, just leave that up, Johnny, for a while. The symbol of the sign of the rainbow, the sign of the promise God made to Noah. So what do you think of when you see a rainbow? Gold, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You still look, leprechauns, Lucky Charms, yeah.
Roy G. Biv.
What's that?
Roy G. Biv.
Yep, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Oh, okay. If I heard that, I didn't know that. Say that again. Talk into your microphone.
Roy G. Biv.
Roy G. Bibb. That's the different colors, evidently. Ah, okay. I didn't teach 3rd and 4th grade. I wouldn't have known that. What else?
Just a promise, makes you realize that God is faithful, He's there.
It's a promise. We, as believers, hopefully we think of God's unfailing, unconditional promise to Noah to never again destroy the earth with water.
Just the beauty of it.
The beauty, think of the beauty of it. Have any of y'all ever read any Tom Clancy books? Rainbow Six? I thought of Rainbow Six. So that's kind of strange, isn't it? That was Tom Clancy's, his group of special forces folks, I guess you would say. What else? Anything else? There's also the rainbow cleaning system that used to be advertised a lot on TV. I've not seen that in quite a while now. The rainbow cleaning system. Rainbow the Rock Band. Never heard of Rainbow the Rock Band. Have you heard of them, Jill? No, I hadn't either. Rainbow sandals. Does anybody have any rainbow sandals? No, not heard of that, but they're out there. So it's a lot of things you could think of when you think of rainbows, but hopefully I forgot Martha may have said this, that you think of God's unfailing, unconditional promise that he made to Noah and to us even now. All right.
You can look at the fact that man will distort anything God has given him. And it has been extremely distorted today.
Yeah. Jeff says that man can distort anything that God gives to us. So I guess, I don't know, maybe that's rainbow sandals. I don't know. But yes, I don't know. Yeah, today you think of the rainbow flag, that's probably a response to Jeff's point. It's just a distortion of the rainbow.
When it's raining and the sun is shining, you'll always run out to the window or something to look out to see if you can see a rainbow.
That's right.
So it always is exciting, I think, to see a rainbow. It is.
Mary's saying it's exciting to see a rainbow, that when it's raining and the sun's shining, you'll go to the window, you'll stick your head outdoors, whatever, to see if you can see the rainbow.
Again, it's order. You know,
It's-
it's like God does everything in order. and-
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
everything has to fall in line. You have to have the rain and the sun just at the right moment.
that's a great point. And the colors are always in the same order, aren't
Yeah.
they? Doesn't shuffle up the colors. Yeah, God is always a God of order.
And it's only revealed by light.
It's only revealed by what?
Light.
Light. It's only revealed by light. Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Kind of another symbolic thought of who is light. Who is light? Jesus, right? What'd you say, Jill? I'm sorry.
They're not rainbows in the dark.
It's not rainbows in the dark.
The rainbow exists all the time. It is only revealed when light hits the water
Yeah.
in the air. So
Yeah.
it's there at night, you just can't see it.
Yeah.
It's actually there today, but we can't see it.
Good point. Jeff's saying the rainbow's always there, but we just can't see it. Let's look at, some of you may remember this from March 2021 if you live here. Johnny, do we have the, yeah, we got it back there, the video of the flood in Lebanon. Can you run that real quick? That's the square in Lebanon, if you don't recognize it. And this again is March of 2021. You know, this is way off to anything, but I remember growing up, well, supposedly several times, the flooding in Lebanon was supposed to be fixed on the square. It never has been, but they've supposedly done that several times. So I remember growing up, my father, this has nothing to do with anything, just remind me that. My father owned a couple of restaurants off the square. My uncle and grandfather at one point managed a couple of theaters off the square, and when they thought, got a weather forecast is going to be a flood, had to get up whatever time of night, whatever, go down and try to put sandbags in front of your businesses to keep it from flooding. Martha's grandparents had businesses off the square as well, so that was a normal routine way back when, so they were supposedly getting to fix that. Obviously, they didn't, but that's a local flood and not a worldwide flood. Noah's flood worldwide. Hard to comprehend. So, with the symbol of the promise that there will be a flood again, the rainbow, have you ever made a promise to someone or had someone make a promise to you? You ever promised someone something, or anybody ever promised you something?
If you're married, you have.
Ah, yeah, if you're married, you have. As a matter of fact, I put on there our wedding vows. I think I got this right. It says on August 17th, it said, in the name of God, I, Tom, take you, Martha, to be my wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until parted by death. So we won't ask Martha how I've done on that, and don't ask her. But
You're still here, so.
yeah, I'm still here. She ain't killed me yet. So yes, that's a promise that if you're married, you probably have some promise similar to that. I have been married. What else? Anybody else have a promise made? Or
Hannah had one.
Hannah?
Hannah?
Hannah in the Bible?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Sam-
Hannah in
you
the
know,
Bible, what was the promise?
Samuel, if she had a child, she would give him to the church to raise.
Yeah, she took him down to the temple and presented him to Eli, and he became a Nazarite, it's thought, and so he was dedicated to the Lord. So that's a promise in the Bible. How about personal? Anybody had another personal promise? I'm the only one. Yeah, Mark. Everybody that joins the military has to make a promise as such, takes an oath. Yeah. Exactly. Protect and serve. Yeah. To go to court, you got to promise to tell the truth, don't you? Good one. You have people who used to go to school, you'd say the Pledge of Allegiance, which is a promise. Good one. Yeah. Yeah, it's people in the medical profession, a nurse, doctors, etc. The promise, isn't that the Hippocratic Oath? They promise not to do no harm to people. Yeah. Our deacons just made promises. We make promises to them. They make promises to the church body as such. Yeah.
Well, parents do too in the baby dedications.
Parents make promises in the baby dedication and raising the children, as well as the church makes promises to the parents. Yeah. Children get in trouble, they promise not to do it again. I made a promise to our children when they were in high school. I told them that if they could ever beat me in tennis, I would buy them a new car. So fortunately, they've not gotten a new car from me. But at some point, I'm going to have to tell them, oh, that promise is over, sorry. What else? Anybody else? Good. A lot of good ones there. Thank you. So have you ever had a promise made to you and the promise was broken? If so, how did you feel? Let down, Jill says. Let down. How else?
You wouldn't trust that person anymore.
Wouldn't trust that person anymore. Yeah. Disappointed. Yeah. What else? What? Betrayed. Betrayed, yeah. What's the difference in promises some people sometimes make and the promise that God makes, promises that God makes? God does not, never breaks his promises. We can trust if God makes us a promise, he will keep it. Not like people that oftentimes we fail to keep our promises. No. So in a previous lesson, we discussed reasons why the flood of Noah's day was not a local flood. I think I did that while I was not here, but a worldwide flood. So what does the rainbow have to do with the reasoning that Noah's flood was not a local flood? What? You can see a rainbow anywhere in the world. That's a good point. So it's worldwide. You can see it anywhere. Okay, good. So God told us that he gave us this rainbow. Why? Is a promise that what? Yeah, he never would destroy the world again by flood. So if the world was destroyed again by flood, what would that make God? A liar, a promise breaker, a liar. So we know then that we've seen a lot of local floods. We just showed one in Lebanon from just a year or so ago. So there's been a lot of local floods, but the earth has never again seen a worldwide flood. So God's, as we said earlier, God's promises are not broken. God is the way, the truth, and the life. Being the truth, God never lies. He never breaks a promise he makes. So when we'll have to start this next week. We're already behind where I thought we would be. We're going to really struggle to get all this done by the end of this month. But next week's lesson, we'll begin by looking into this promise. And there are 8 different features of God's covenant, of God's promise that we see that come from the flood as such. So that's signified, again, the promise is signified by the rainbow. We'll also see next week a change in the relationship between man and animals and God's ordaining and establishment of a second institution. We'll talk about that, what that is. And let's see. So those are the things we'll pick up. Hopefully next week we'll finish. The goal would be to finish chapter, the first 17 verses of chapter 9. We'll see if we can do that or not. We'll see. So, got a ways to go. So thank y'all for being here this morning. Thank you for your participation. Excellent participation this morning. You all get a gold star for great participation today. Check with Johnny on your way out to get your gold star. So, thank y'all for being here. Have a blessed week. Thank you.